Good evening, everybody, and welcome into another Friday night edition of Dodgers Dawgs, part of the Dodgers Daily Network. My name is Austin Brubaker. I will be your host this evening. Casey's not feeling great right now. He should be back some point next week to continue with all of the different programming that he normally does. Whenever he's feeling better, he will be back and he will be interacting with you guys. So continue to send your best wishes out to Casey. I'm excited to be here tonight and be able to interact with you guys just like I did on the show on Monday. Monday we had a little bit of overview with roster talk, particularly with topics like minor league options and roster flexibility and all sorts of nature. We got to explore a little bit and got a little bit of an overview of the roster there. The Dodgers since then, and this has actually happened today, the Dodgers have made a signing. They added a player from Korea that we're going to be talking a little bit about today. What does that mean for the overall roster and where the Dodgers could potentially go from there? It is Friday night in the big town, and I'm extremely excited to be here with you guys. Excited to be just interacting with you guys. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about this. We're going to be talking about implications to the roster. And then we're also going to be talking about what this has meant for other players as well, because not only did the Dodgers make a signing, they designated a player for assignment. I'm sure a lot of you have already heard or the player that they signed and the player that they designated for assignment, but we're going to review that as well today. So I'm grateful for you guys, grateful to be able to interact with you guys in the chat. I want to have that interaction and answer as many questions as I possibly can. Typically, the past couple of shows has been me rambling on for quite a while on very important topics, which certainly I will do a lot tonight. But I also want to make sure that I'm answering as many questions from you guys as I possibly can. So feel free to put your questions down in the comment section. Feel free to give me your thoughts as well, as the Dodgers made a signing that was, in my eyes, unexpected. It was a move that there wasn't a whole lot of rumors linking him to the Dodgers going into it. So just to let you guys know, if you are not aware, for those of you listening podcast form or for those of you just tuning in, the Dodgers did make a signing. It is a international player from Korea. I believe it's Hye-seong Kim, not Ha-seong Kim. It is not Hye-seong Kim, Hye-seong Kim. Sorry, pronunciation not great with all of that. Just trying to make sure that I'm pronunciating it correct. He was signed from Korea over to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Over the past couple of seasons, has been a really solid player in the KBO. KBO being the Korean Baseball League over there, which there have been some signings come over there. Most recently, we saw for like the San Francisco Giants, Jung-Hoo Lee made the transfer over to Major League Baseball with San Francisco. Over the past couple of seasons, he's had some pretty solid numbers for the KBO, putting up a 119, 137, and 118 WRC plus. This is the Dodgers' most recent signing, Hye-seong Kim, not Ha-seong Kim, that we've been talking about quite a bit. Some interesting things about Kim, which I'll just refer to him as Kim to this point, just to make sure I'm doing the pronunciation right. He is a little bit of a versatile player. Let's talk about his offensive profile first. Offensively, very much a bat-to-ball type of player. Has hit well for average and consistently puts the ball in play at the KBO, which is not uncommon for a lot of guys at that level. Typically, when you're dealing with some international free agents, there is different styles of play. This is the style of play that he has. Is much more contact oriented. He's had put up some really good batting averages past 4 seasons with regular consistent playing time. 304, 318, 335, and 326, 21 through 24. Very solid at the plate, putting the ball in play. ISO over the past couple of seasons has gone up. The number of home runs that he's hit has gone up, but it's still limited home run power that he has. 11 home runs is what he was able to produce in his most recent season in the KBO. He does have a lot of speed. He steals a lot of bases, and he steals them fairly efficiently too. Last year stole 30 bases. You look at some of his weighted stolen base seasons, he's very much in the positive, which means that he's a really above average and efficient base stealer. Great to see. And in the past, he has been a solid or at least versatile defender. Now, I'm not going to pretend with a lot of this evaluation that I'm an expert on the Dodgers' most recent signing, Kim, because I'm not. I don't watch a whole lot of KBO baseball, and so I've taken a lot of this analysis based on the limited information that I know, and based off of some of the numbers that I have. The past couple of seasons, he's been more primarily a second baseman. His last full time that he played the shortstop position was back during the 2021 season, in which case I don't take everything, fielding percentage or errors as completely everything, but he did struggle a little bit, especially with the error-wise at the shortstop position in 2021. Again, I don't know about his range and what plays were made possible because of that, which gets into a little bit of baseball analytical fielding type stuff that not exactly sure what he actually looked like without seeing some of the film. But he did commit 30 errors at the shortstop position during the 2021 season. He had some better seasons previously, error-wise, at the shortstop position, but there is some versatility there. Primarily, he has been a second baseman, although it sounds like from the Dodgers' mindset, they're seeing him as a super utility, versatile player that they can help plug around, and with the Dodgers coaching, they can help make him into a little bit of a better defender. So, primarily has played second base over the past couple of seasons, or at least has transitioned that significantly more over the past 3 seasons. Has some versatility that he can grow into, especially as he gets more experience being a little bit more versatile. So, the Dodgers signed him to a 3-year, $12.5 million contract that includes 2 club options. I believe they have to be used at the exact same time, but equaling to about 10-ish million. So overall, the entire length of the contract could be worth about 5 years and about $22 million. It is not money-wise, financially-wise, a very big investment for the Dodgers because of the financial resources that they are able to dish out and able to give out. And so from that aspect, there's not a whole lot of cost. There's not a whole lot of risk in order to be able to go out and get a player like this, which is a good thing. There is some competition for his services, for Kim's services, but the Dodgers were able to win out, and ultimately he decided to come to the Los Angeles Dodgers. A couple of other things that I want to make note before we get into his role on the roster and some very good positive things about Kim. Another thing that I want to make note about him, and this is just in general with players that come over internationally and particularly from Korea or Japan, there often is an adjustment period that takes place because of the different style of baseball coming over to Major League Baseball. There just is a little bit of a different style that comes over. So, for players, and I'm using 2 of the most recent examples of hitters, and this is what a lot of other people have talked about, players like Hye-seong Kim, who is not who the Dodgers signed. The Dodgers signed Hye-seong Kim with Hye-seong Kim, who played for the Padres, and with Jung-Hoo Lee, who was injured a lot last year but played for the Giants. There was an adjustment period when they first came over, and usually takes them a little bit in order to get acclimated to the big league level. For a player like Kim, like the Dodgers just signed, who I don't think is as highly touted when coming over as Ha-seong Kim or Jung-Hoo Lee was, just given the contract that each one of them were given, and given the contract that Kim was just given for the Dodgers. There likely is going to be a similar adjustment period for him to get acclimated to Major League Baseball, get acclimated to baseball in America. So, that is important to keep in mind, and it is important to understand and give patience to this type of player, because it likely is going to take him a year, maybe even 2 years, to get fully acclimated to baseball in this style of game. So, be patient with this type of player. Where this is some good things, and I want to start off with some of the good things for the Dodgers, because there's actually a lot to like about this type of deal. And I think the biggest thing that is really good for this type of deal, and especially for getting a player like Kim, is the minor league options that are available. Now, for international free agents, when they come over, typically what happens, or at least this happens to some players, is some of the players that come over sign deals with major league clubs. They have some minor league options that are attached, but there is a veto type power where they can basically refuse to be sent down to the minor league level unless basically forced to. There's nothing like that from all reporting in this type of deal, and which means that the Dodgers, with a player like Kim, have flexibility to be able to keep him on the big league roster if he earns it, which in the best case scenario for the Dodgers is he comes over right away and he quickly picks up the game of baseball and plays to the level that he did in the KBO, has the contact skills, has the speed ability, and the ability to play good defense at the second base position, be able to move around a little bit, in which the Dodgers get the best case scenario right away. That likely is not going to happen immediately, at least given past projections or past players that have come over from that level. I want to anticipate him to be immediately the everyday option. Could he be a bench bat? And could the assumption be from the Dodgers that he's a bench bat? Absolutely, that could be the case for Kim. I don't necessarily know if that's the exact role that he is going to get, and the Dodgers have flexibility with this type of player, which is something that we've talked a lot about for this offense for the Dodgers, is they don't have a lot of guys that have minor league options and a lot of flexibility. With getting a player like this, you have a guy that has options, that has flexibility, which means if he doesn't during the course of spring training, or let's say that he starts off the season with the Dodgers, not a guarantee, we'll get to that in just a little bit. If he goes into spring training, or if he starts off the season with the Dodgers and it's taking a little bit to get acclimated to the big league level, he doesn't necessarily have to make it or stay on the Los Angeles Dodgers 26-man roster. They have flexibility to be able to be patient with him as they see fit. I think that is a very good thing, and something that is very much needed for a lot of players that are added to this roster. Is you need flexibility to be able to move guys up and down. Otherwise, you are stuck with whatever production they have and have an inability, besides injuries, to be able to move guys up. Currently on the roster, or the projected roster that is taking place, the 13 position players that the Dodgers have, currently, I believe they only have 2 players that are projected to have minor league options. This projected 13-man lineup has Kim as a replacement for Andy Pages. The 2 players that would have minor league options would be Kim and Gavin Lux. Gavin Lux, if he's on the Dodgers, is not getting sent down to Oklahoma City, which means you have Kim being on this roster, and there could be a competition in spring training for a final roster spot between Kim and Andy Pages to make the opening day roster. Could be something to keep an eye out for both of them, depending on how the Dodgers think about this. If they're going into this saying that he's going to make it on the team and be a versatile player, then there's no room or there's seemingly without a trade no room for a James Outman or for an Andy Pages. Or if their idea is there's going to be some healthy competition, they have time to be patient with Kim. I think that's a very good thing. I also find it fascinating and interesting the profile player that Kim is. Perhaps it just came at a cost where the Dodgers, and especially because they need some flexibility, be able to send guys up and down, they were willing to take on a deal like this. But the profile, the type of player that he is, or at least the speed element of his game, it's intriguing because it's a profile of player that the Dodgers are much more accustomed to acquiring those type of players. I think of back to the 2023 draft when they surprised a whole lot of people when they drafted Kendall George, who has 90 grade speed and is very much more of a bat-to-ball speed type profile, similar to what Kim is. Or I think even back to this past year's draft when they drafted Kellen Lindsey, again, very much a speed element to his game. And I think with Kim, the player that they just brought in, there is a speed element to his game and an ability to steal bases. Clearly, I think there is a element from some parts of the scouting department and the player development part that wants to acquire those type of players, or at least there has been an increased priority in getting out speed into this Dodgers organization, speed into this Dodgers lineup. Just find that absolutely fascinating that they're going out and doing that. So I think minor league options and having that flexibility is very much a good thing. It also provides a little bit of versatility as well, although I think that there's a lot to be able to show and a lot to be able to prove. So just looking at Kim over the past several seasons, just to give you guys an idea of what he's had, there's been a lot of play at second base, 2022 through 2024. That was his primary position. And in fact, he only played second base during the 2024 season. He has played some third base, but not since 2020. And again, you're only talking about less than 20 games. He has played a lot of shortstop, but hasn't really played much shortstop since the 2021 season. There could be a lot of growth that he could have at the shortstop position. And if he's able to add that to his profile, his value goes up tremendously. If he has the ability to back up at the shortstop position, perhaps the Dodgers, who have done far more scouting than I have, and the people that actually know more than I do, have seen him play a lot of shortstop. If the Dodgers trust his ability to do that, I think that says a lot about their evaluation of him. He also spent a little bit of time in the outfield in 2020, although it's 40-something games, and it was only for the one season. So perhaps there is some additional versatility that they could add to his profile to make him a little bit more well-rounded player. He has played around, but been a little bit more primarily a second base option. So with Kim, a couple of things that I want to state with this signing. One, versatility and optionability, I think is great. And clearly the Dodgers have made him a priority. And with 40-man roster spots being so incredibly valuable, they chose him as a player to add to this 40-man roster, which gives me a lot of belief and trust that he can be that type of player. There is some concerns that I have with him transitioning over to the major league level. That typically happens with these types of players. He has some really good numbers and really solid numbers in the KBO. I fear how those could potentially translate just over to the big league level, which this is just me being a little bit skeptical on my end. But I think there still is, with the cost that they have and with the option and ability, still is a good signing for them to be able to make. I just don't think it's going to be an immediate league average to above league average type of hitter. I think there's going to be a little bit more of a transition that we're going to have to be patient with him to make over that adjustment. I also am a little bit confused, or potentially, depending on what his versatility and that the Dodgers see him. If he is just a primarily second base option, I don't see how that is going to be as well suited for the Dodgers in the long-term future. They already have a person that it can play the second base position, and they also have Mookie Betts, who I think we all envision transitioning to second base at some point over the next couple of seasons. We thought it was going to be entering this season. Maybe it's not entering this season. Depends on what he's able to do. I think there has to be some added versatility to make a player like Kim valuable to the Dodgers offense and lineup, but he's going to be a great insurance option and at the very least provide immediate depth at the minor league level to be able to come up and help this team, and could develop into a really solid player depending on what he's able to do and how that transition is going to be able to work. It probably will not be immediate great out of the gate, although he certainly could be. And I could be totally wrong with my evaluation. It depends player by player. Dodgers made the signing. Pretty happy with that. I'm excited to see what he's able to do. He's going to get and deserves to get every single chance to make this roster and do what he can to earn playing time. And now that he's in the organization, I'm excited. I'm thrilled and ready to root him on and try to get him to be the best possible player that he can be. So let me know down in the comments section what you guys think of the signing of Kim to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Where do you see his role being on this roster? Now, before we get to an evaluation of the overall roster and where exactly he fits in, we do have to make mention, because with the signing of Teoscar Hernandez, the Dodgers' 40-man roster was full. Now, with the signing of Kim, the Dodgers' 40-man roster was at 41, which meant they had to make a decision as far as what they were going to do with a roster spot. They had to create a 40-man roster spot in order to sign Kim. They could not wait until spring training to add him to the roster. So the Dodgers made a decision, and the Dodgers decided to designate for assignment Diego Cartaya. First off, I just want to say this personally. Diego Cartaya, amazing human being. He absolutely is a great human being, and he has taken on the weight for the past couple of seasons of being one of the Dodgers' top prospects in the game of baseball. I think this is it's a reminder for people to be hesitant to crown guys, not because Diego Cartaya didn't deserve it, but I think a lot of the pressure and weight put be able to carry the Dodger system on somebody who was 20 years old, just trying to find his way in America, I think can often be something where Dodgers, the fans of the organization, put a lot of pressure on these guys to succeed and try to do everything they can to say this is going to be the next big guy, when player development is not linear. It is not one of these things where everybody takes the exact same trajectory up to their major league potential. Oftentimes there's peaks and valleys and different things that happen. Now with Diego Cartaya, especially following the 2022 season, which I had the absolute privilege to be able to watch a lot of his 2022 season when he was in Great Lakes, in which case he was still absolutely amazing. We were so excited to be able to have the privilege to watch Diego Cartaya catch in Great Lakes, which hadn't happened before. A lot of the top prospects did not go through Great Lakes because they were previously a low A in the minor league system for the Dodgers Midwest League after 2020 switched up to high A. So now we started to get some of the top prospects, and Diego Cartaya was one of the main pieces in there. So it was absolute privilege to be able to watch him go. He struggled quite a bit during the 2023 season. Last year, made a lot of strides, especially in Tulsa. He made a lot of advancements defensively. You saw it in the offensive production. Started to pick up a little bit at the AA level. Made it up to AAA. Struggled a little bit on the offensive side, but made a lot of adjustments defensively. Why did the Dodgers make this decision? And I think there's a couple of different reasons that all intersect together. And then we'll talk about what the Dodgers can do moving forward and what this actually means for the future for Diego Cartaya. One, and I think this is the obvious one, the catching future for the Dodgers is pretty backed up. They have Will Smith signed for the next 9 seasons, who has been one of the best catchers in the game of baseball offensively, and one of the better ones, especially against throwing runners out at second base. I think he was one of the best ones at it last year. He's one of the top catchers, somebody that's going to get significant playing time, or catching 110 to 120 games for you consistently. Will Smith is not going anywhere, which means at least at a bare minimum for the future, half of the catching spots are locked up. You combine that with Dalton Rushing being the top prospect that you have that is likely to get the call up and has been more advanced to this point in his career, meaning he's closer to at this point to the big league level than Diego Cartaya. Doesn't mean that their futures are going to be exactly the same, or that Diego Cartaya isn't a big league caliber talent, but that Dalton Rushing is closer to that level and has proven to be more consistent to this point. And so the organization sees him likely as that next wave, or the guy that they're likely to give the next chance to after they decide to move on from an Austin Barnes. Austin Barnes was signed to a 1-year deal, or his option was picked up to be part of this Dodgers roster, and so he's going to get, just like he has the past couple of seasons, backup catching duty. And that's going to consist of 120-ish plate appearances if he's on the roster the entire season. Maybe catch once a week or so, get Will Smith off of his feet, make sure that he's a little bit more rested. He is the primary backup catcher. So then you are stuck with, and those are really the 3 main options. Then the Dodgers, on their 40-man roster, had 2 other talented catchers, Diego Cartaya and Hunter Fiducia. Now, I've been an advocate for Hunter Fiducia to be traded at some point during this offseason, primarily after Austin Barnes, his club option, was picked up. The reason why I was a fan or wanted that to happen is because I believe Hunter Fiducia is as close to being big league ready as he can be. I believe that he is a big league caliber backup catcher, or can be a big league caliber backup catcher for a lot of different organizations, and I believe that he deserves to have an opportunity that I likely would not have seen be here at the Dodgers. Now, he is a lot closer to the big league ready than Diego Cartaya is right now. He spent the past season or 2 in Oklahoma City. He's had a lot of experience there, and he's also had a lot of success at AAA Oklahoma City. It's exciting to see all the success that he has. Now it's about waiting for that opportunity. So the Dodgers, I think, had a choice of what they wanted to do with Hunter Fiducia or Diego Cartaya. And this is where minor league options and major league readiness come into play. So, for LA, for the Dodgers, and Diego Cartaya only had 1 minor league option left, which he was not going to make the team coming out of camp unless he was absolutely amazing coming out of camp, and the Dodgers decided to move off of Austin Barnes. There was practically no shot of Diego Cartaya making the major league team out of spring training, which means his minor league options, assuming he got sent down to the minor league level, would have been at 0. And he likely would have received very little opportunities in LA through the course of the 2025 season in order for them to give him a realistic chance to stick on the major league level. Which means 2025 likely spends most of, if not all of the season in Oklahoma City. Then you enter the 2026 offseason, or after the 2025 season, in which case Diego Cartaya would have had to stay on the major league club for basically the rest of his Dodgers tenure before he was designated for assignment, which means that you would have to give him a 26-man roster spot. Now, that is a lot to bet on if you're the Dodgers and Diego Cartaya, because that also means that you're likely limiting opportunities and availability for a player like a Dalton Rushing, who I think is incredible talent and that the Dodgers are prioritizing at-bats and spots for. So then you would have to be 100% certain that Diego Cartaya would consist or have a 26-man roster spot. Otherwise, you would designate for him for assignment a little bit later down the line. I think that is one of the main reasons why he was. You combine that with the fact that there is limited openings for the Dodgers, and it was ultimately the right decision to be able to move off for this. Again, I want to reemphasize, and I want to speak this directly to Diego as well. He still has a world of potential and a world of talent and a world of tools. And all those tools that scouts saw in Diego, I believe, are still inside of him. Sometimes the hardest thing to be able to do is find that consistency. And with Diego, there's been a lot of pressure for him to live up to the next Dodgers all-star catcher. I think that is the weight and expectations that were incredibly tough to be able to live up on. Go out and just be a Diego Cartaya. And I still believe in the talent. I still believe in the tools. He's still young. He's still 23 years old. So there's still a lot of room and growth for him. Now, what does this mean for him over the course of the next couple of days? Well, the Dodgers designated him for assignment. And when an organization designates a player for assignment, they have 7 days to be able to find some sort of trade for him. So, my guess, over the course of the next week or so, they're going to be looking for some type of trade for Diego Cartaya, whether that's for, I don't know exactly what they'd be looking for, another prospect, whether they combine him with somebody else and to try to get and go out and try to get a big league caliber player, whether they go out and try to trade for international sign-in bonus money or whatever they're trying to trade for Diego Cartaya. I believe, and you can already see this from other accounts from fans of other organizations, not that they're necessarily looking at it exactly how the front offices are, but there certainly is a lot of intrigue and interest in a player like Diego who could potentially grow into a catching role, whether that be backup or starting catcher within another organization, or they could at least give with a team that has a little bit more flexibility and more room to take on roster spots, could give him a little bit of a flyer. If a trade doesn't work out, I believe it goes through the waiver wire process, which means other teams have the ability to be able to select Diego Cartaya from the Dodgers 40-man roster. There's some sort of ordering process with that. If he passes through those waivers, meaning no teams decides to add them to this roster, then he could return to the Dodgers in their minor league system and just not be on their 40-man roster, but be like most other minor league players are under that system. For a talent like him, I'm not anticipating that happening, which means I think he's very likely, and the Dodgers are very likely, looking for some type of trade. How creative they'll be and whether other players will be included in that, I'm not entirely sure. Nobody really knows besides the organization, but that's what they're going to be looking for. So whatever the future is for Diego, which his baseball career is not done, he will get another opportunity with some other organization and deserves to get another opportunity. I'm rooting for him. I hope he finds success, and I hope he's able to establish himself somewhere and have a little bit of a better outlook in future than what he had for the Dodgers. So, that was a little bit of talk Diego Cartaya. That was a little bit of talk of the Dodgers' most recent addition to their roster. Where are the Dodgers at 40-man roster-wise? I think they are in a very similar place to where they were before. Which might seem like the easy answer to give. It entirely depends on how they're actually looking for the roster spot for Kim. Do they anticipate him being immediately on the major league team, or is he going to have to earn a roster spot for spring training. With his ability to have minor league options, I think that creates a lot of potential options and competition for the roster spot. Just looking at the projected roster by Fangraphs right now, which is not perfect and not exactly what you're looking for every single time, but gives a good indication of the options that the Dodgers have. The Dodgers' projected lineup right now is Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Teoscar, Max Muncy, Will Smith, Michael Conforto, Tommy Edman, and Gavin Lux, with the bench being Austin Barnes, Miguel Rojas, Chris Taylor, and Kim. Now, I think with the roster as it's currently constructed, I think there's going to be probably some good competition between Kim, Pages, and Outman, assuming they do not make any additional trades. You could potentially see, if they decide to bring Kike Hernandez back, I think that likely would have to come. They could come in the spot for Kim, but then you're left with really no flexibility. I think if they want to, at this point, bring back a Kike Hernandez, they probably have to look for some sort of way to move off of Chris Taylor. That probably is the most likely scenario if they want to make that work. Or you're potentially looking at a trade for a Gavin Lux. I wouldn't anticipate having Kim start over Gavin Lux at this point. I think Gavin Lux has proven that he's big league ready, and he is a major league caliber player. You look at his second half, and he put up a 152 WRC plus and 200 some plate appearances. I think that stuck out in Dodgers' mind, and whatever concerns and questions that you have about his defensive limitations, him primarily just being a second base option. Okay, that certainly is not the greatest ideal type of thing. You might have similar questions at this point with Kim. Doesn't mean that he could go over and be something amazing and provide a little bit of versatility, but that is certainly a question going forward. So with Kim, I think there's going to be probably some competition, since he has options, with the other players that do have minor league options, because there's not a whole lot of room. And I'm rooting for him to do everything that he can to try to earn a roster spot, because I think that would be a great thing for the Dodgers. It does limit potentially some opportunities for some other players, and potentially could limit opportunities for Andy Pages or James Outman or Dalton Rushing, although a lot of those guys are going to get opportunities in the outfield, and I think a lot of their fate could be determined by what the Dodgers do with players like Chris Taylor and Gavin Lux, and whether they want to go ahead and re-sign a Kike Hernandez. That's the state of the roster a little bit right now. I want to go and make sure that I actually go ahead and answer some of your questions a little bit down in the comment section down below. Let me know what sort of questions that you have for the roster, and where do you see him fitting into this organization right now. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start with the comment section right at the top. Chang Lu, thank you very much for joining us. Diego Cartaya, be a free agent, or Dodgers resign him, sending back to the minor leagues. He likely will be either traded or he will be picked up by waivers from another organization. I don't anticipate him remaining in the Dodgers organization, because I think the talent is still there, and or at least the potential is still much there, that another team's going to be willing to give him a chance, and especially if they have more roster spots available than what the Dodgers do have. Let's continue going right now. Mr. John Rod wants to trade Cartaya for international pool money so we can sign Sasaki. I don't think that's going to necessarily neglect you or inhibit you from being able to sign a Sasaki, because I don't think it's going to be the highest bidder that's going to take Roki Sasaki. I think he's going to be looking for whatever is the best fit for him, and that's going to be an evaluation that he's going to have to make going forward. Chuck Huddleston, hopefully we package Taylor with Cartaya to free up a roster spot for a reliever. Could be an option, although, again, I caution people with these types of moves and these types of trades. Typically, there often is trade packages that people kind of think of with players that are on the fringes of the Dodgers 40-man roster, or players that they might not necessarily like. When you're conducting trades, you have to give something up in order to get something of value in return. Meaning you have to think of things from the other organization's point of view. Is there an organization that could take on a player like a Chris Taylor? Sure, there could be. But they saw the exact same struggles that the Dodgers saw through the course of the 2024 season, or at least can see a lot of the numbers and do a lot of the scouting that the Dodgers did. And so I think there might be some hesitation from other organizations to say, sure, we'll take on Chris Taylor and that contract and give you a roster spot so you can be better and become World Series champions again. I think that is something that is probably unlikely to happen given where he's at. So I think the Dodgers have to I think it's very likely that they're going to have to either, if they go ahead and trade him, eat most of the cost for Chris Taylor, or they're going to have to make a decision as far as how much do we see him bouncing back, and what is the best decision for us as an organization. Do we have to move on, and do we have to designate Chris Taylor for assignment? I think that's probably the most likely move. I think a package of Chris Taylor and Diego Cartaya, really awesome player. He also was just recently designated for assignment, so I don't think a whole lot of teams, especially with him only having one minor league option, are going to give up a ton for that. So the impact type reliever, especially major league caliber type reliever, might not necessarily be quite there. Christopher Navarro, thank you very much for joining us. As always, we should have traded Cartaya earlier. Lux was a number one prospect in Major League Baseball and lost some value. That could be something that you take into account or something that you do in an evaluation. Certainly, there is ups and downs, and there is no guarantee with each player that comes in through the farm system. Certainly is not something that happens. There's not going to be a guaranteed big league player for each one of these guys. The process is linear, and you don't necessarily know what you're going to get with each one of these guys. It's the exact same thing, or at least similar-ish, but with a lot more variance at the minor league level when signing guys, especially to longer-term deals in free agency. You don't necessarily know what you're going to get towards the back end of deals. If they knew what they were going to get during the back end of the Chris Taylor contract, they likely would not have signed him to the length that they signed him to. It is about predicting things in the future, and especially with a lot of guys that come up through the system, it can be a little bit of a bouncy, rocky type of avenue with that, which leads to a lot of people wanting to trade some of the prospects in order to get stuff back. Totally see some of the evaluation with that. However, you also need to have guys to come up through your system in order to build some type of sustained success, and you need an organization that's able to build up guys that can help get them to the place that they need to be. So that is something that you have to keep in mind with both of them. One, it is just to go ahead and when you're talking about these guys, when you're talking about these prospects coming up through their system, they might not always pan out, but you need some of them to pan out in order to have some sustained success. So totally fair point with Diego Cartaya. I wish him nothing but the best, and I'm not writing him off for a big league career in the future. Chuck, if somebody like Taylor is traded and money is included, does that money that sent still count against the Dodgers? It could potentially, depending on what exactly it's looking up. But we'll see what happens with that in the future. Chris Navarro, Kim is Arraez with speed. He's still got a lot of proof to be able to see the consistent major league caliber quality of contact going forward and what that's able to do for him. With Kim, I think he potentially could be a little bit better defensively. There's a lot of limitations to Luis Arraez and his defensive ability, which limits some of his value. But with Kim, he's got to be able to prove that his bat can transfer over to the major league level and that he's able to hit consistently and with enough quality of contact over. Typically, when guys come over from there, the strikeouts go up a little bit. We saw that with Hye-seong Kim when he came over from Korea to America to be with San Diego. His strikeout rate went up, that he got acclimated a little bit better. Walk rate typically went down a little bit. So you could see some of that. It depends on how he makes that adjustment to the big league level, but that's certainly a decent-ish comparison, being more of a contact-oriented type of player. I like where you're thinking like that. ENG, he's going to hit 300 and win the Gold Glove. If Lux goes back to being mediocre, Kim will have a great chance to prove himself. Certainly will. One thing that I want to make note, and I know this has been going out a lot, he did win, I believe, 3 or 4 straight seasons. Kim did the Golden Glove Award in Korea, the KBO. It's important to know what that award actually is. That award is for the best player at each position, not necessarily the best defensive player at each position. So back in, I believe, 2021, when he won that award at the shortstop position, that doesn't mean that he was necessarily the best shortstop defensively at that position. It just meant that he was the best player playing shortstop in the KBO for them. Just an important thing to keep in mind with that. Doesn't mean that he's a bad shortstop or he wasn't the best defensive shortstop. I would guess that he probably wasn't, given some of the fielding statistics that I've seen. But he could be a really solid player. And certainly this is going to add increased pressure to a player like a Gavin Lux to be able to succeed, especially if Kim comes over and immediately starts hitting right away. I think that could be something where there could be added pressure to him. Kristen Navarro mentions that Kim, Rojas, Taylor, and Lux are all utility players. I would disagree on Lux. I think right now he's a second base only option. Mookie and Edman as well. Certainly is a lot of versatility to this team, which the Dodgers need to have in order to be able to have sustained success and be able to move guys up and down. When you do not have the ability, or you do not have flexibility of the first base and designated hitter positions. I'm glad with what the Dodgers have. They have Freddie Freeman at first base, and they have Shohei Ohtani at designated hitter. Doesn't really get much better than that. But that means the guys that you have filling out the rest of your roster, filling out the rest of the field, you need to have guys that can move into different positions and are athletic enough to not have to be forced to a designated hitter position. So guys like this create flexibility on the roster and can fill in holes as needed, especially for a team that not only has those limitations to their roster, but it is also one of the, if not the oldest, and I think it is the oldest roster offensively and defensively. You have to have guys that can fill in different positions for when there is injuries or when guys need additional rest. Let's see. Continuing on with this in just a second. David Herrera says they got to move off of Taylor. Certainly would add a lot to what they're wanting to do, depending on how they view Kim on this roster. Or if they want to add Kike Hernandez, I think that has to be the case. I don't think it can coexist, Taylor and Kike, because then every single guy, except for Gavin Lux with minor league options, has to be sent down to the minor league level. And I've already expressed the concern with using Andy Page's last minor league option means his trade value goes down basically immediately from the high that it currently is at. Now, this move, I think, probably prevents or at least limits the likelihood that, depending on how they see Kim, which is likely a second base that has some versatility as well, I think it probably limits the move or likelihood that they go out and get a shortstop for this upcoming season, because I think they have a lot of players that can't fill in if Mookie Betts doesn't perform well at the shortstop position. I think it probably limits that. But if it limits that, you still have to think about Andy Pages and what his future is for this team and how you're going to be able to go about it. So we'll continue on. I know we have a couple of super chats. I'll get to that in just a second. Just want to make my way down for that. So I'm incredibly grateful for you guys who have left super chats, and I will get to those in just a second. Joshua Holtz just joined starting from the beginning, but doesn't signing Kim take money away from Roki unless they trade for more? I don't believe it does. I think this is from some other aspect. So this, I think, would be the process that a Roki Sasaki would go to if he had waited a couple of years to be able to come over from Japan. Once players reach a certain age or a certain number of years within the KBO or the Japanese Baseball League, once they have that certain number of years, then they can sign over and sign whatever deal that they want. It's the reason why the Dodgers were able to pay $325 million for Yoshinobu Yamamoto last year. It did not impact their international free agent bonus pool money because he wasn't under certain restrictions or certain age category to be able to sign guys. It typically happens when guys are a little bit younger in their process. What's interesting about Roki Sasaki is that he's coming over before he can sign the big mega deal. Like if Roki Sasaki was coming over and he had the same pedigree, but was a couple of years older or similar to the situation that Yoshinobu Yamamoto was coming over, he would get that type of deal. That type of deal would not cost against the international free agent pool money. I believe for this deal with Kim, and I could be mistaken on this because I'm not completely an expert, but based on everything that I know, I don't believe it's counting against their international free agent money, so I don't think it would inhibit their ability to go after and get a Roki Sasaki or limit it in any way. That's at least what I believe with this, and I think there's some back and forth on this. Interesting signing, says Christopher Navarro. I watched him on TV when LA played the KBO in Korea, I believe. And yes, he was on that team. I believe it was last year. He hit Bobby Miller pretty hard. Yeah, and there certainly is a lot to like with that on there. Hepatitis, see you later. Kellen Lindsay certainly has a lot of room for some power. And I think there's still a lot of upside with the Kendall George. Certainly, you can make some questions, especially with his limitation for his power. That certainly is not an aspect for his game. But I think the Dodgers had a plan with what they were doing with both of those. And I think there's an interesting connection with some of those signings and what they're able to do going forward. And a player like Kevin McGonigal was a great signing by Detroit. And they got extremely lucky with what they were able to do with getting a player like that. Cole says, trust the Dodgers process, and I certainly trust the Dodgers process. Hepatitis, see you later. Talking a little bit more about shortstops in-house. Alex Freeland, Vargas, Kellen Lindsay, Emil Morales are the potential ones that could be called up to be a shortstop going forward. They certainly have a lot of different options at the shortstop position, going from down lower at the level to a guy who's knocking out the door. And that's going to be another interesting aspect as a player like Alex Freeland. Because I think a player like Kim, who's signed to a deal for the Dodgers for the next 3 seasons plus 2 club options, I think there's going to be a lot of competition between him and a player like Alex Freeland to get opportunities going forward for this team. I think Alex Freeland is a pure shortstop who has the ability to play second base, ability to play a third base as well. How do these two players, as they start to grow into a role potentially with the Dodgers, how does playing time actually work with them, and how do we fit that, especially with Mookie Betts on the infield? I think that's going to be healthy, good competition, and I fully expect Alex Freeland to get opportunities to be able to be a shortstop on this team. How does Kim fit in? Is he going to be a backup utility type role, or that's how they're envisioning? Be really interesting to see what happens. Let's see. Continuing on with some of these. Showtime LA, thanks for joining us. Hey, Austin, it's very cold here in KC. Probably the same for you in Michigan. I'm going to the Great Lakes home opener. Can't wait to see Hope and Oswede Paula. That's awesome, man. I'm actually super excited. I will be. It's snowing here in the great state of Michigan. It's been snowing practically all day. There's a winter weather advisory here. So it's basically stay off the roads if you absolutely can. So it's snowing here. But if you're going to be at the Great Lakes home opener, man, I'm going to be there as well. I will actually be there. So typically what happens, a little bit behind the scenes. One, I'm wearing Great Lakes Loons stuff, the high A affiliate of the Dodgers, in case you're unfamiliar. I will be at those games as well, the home opener. In fact, I won't just be there. I will probably be, and this is what me and my buddies do, we typically wait outside the gate, the outfield gate, which is beyond the outfield. We typically get there like an hour before the gates even open. So the game time will start at 6:05, meaning that the gates will open at 5 o'clock. We will probably be there by 3:30, 4 o'clock, waiting to get into the stadium in 40-degree weather. So Showtime LA, stop by, be able to see me for that. I will be probably sitting in 107 towards the front, probably row 1 during that game. Feel free to say hi to me and anybody else who's around the Great Lakes area. Be sure to say hi. I'm excited to see the guys that are going to be in Great Lakes this season. We'll get into a little bit more of Great Lakes talk during one of these shows, but I'm super excited about that. But yeah, no, if you're at any of these games anywhere in the Midwest, chances are if the Loons are in town, I will be in town too. So be sure to stop by and we'll be able to talk some baseball. Also, fun thing that I got for Christmas, which I know a lot of you guys, not from the Midwest, don't get a chance to go to a lot of Loons games. But if you're going to spring training this year, I'm going to spring training during the very first part of spring training. So it is, I believe, just 48 days until the Dodgers take the field against the Chicago Cubs in Camelback Ranch. I will be there. My dad and I are flying down. We'll be there on the 19th of February. We only staying for a couple of days. We got to fly back to Michigan sometime late afternoon, evening on Saturday the 22nd, I believe. So I'll be there for at least the game, Dodgers versus Cubs, first spring training game. I'm super excited about that. Probably will be to go to at least one of the other games. If not, I'll be spending a whole lot of time on the backfield with a lot of the players out there. So if you're out in spring training, be sure to stop and say hi to me. Would be happy to interact with you guys with that. Continuing on about this, what's your confidence level in signing a Tanner Scott? With Tanner Scott, it's confusing because it would go against the character of the Dodgers and their signings of what they're usually willing to do. So the most recent rumors, and this is just rumors, so take it with a grain of salt, is that that Tanner Scott's looking for potentially a 4-year at about $20 million per year. So potentially a 4-year, $80 million contract. It's not to the extent that Josh Hader got, 5 years, $95 million with the Houston Astros, but it's getting close to that level. And Tanner Scott has been one of the best left-handed relief pitchers in the game of baseball. It is not something within the Dodgers. What they typically do, they don't typically sign relievers to that length of a contract. But also, teams don't typically sign the amount of players and give the type of money that the Dodgers have to a lot of free agents. I think they've gone above and beyond for a lot of free agents that they've given out. So with Tanner Scott, I think the Dodgers are actively looking for an additional reliever. One of my concerns with that, if they add too many relievers that don't have minor league options and they are relying on a 6-man rotation, is I'm worried about the bullpen being worn out through the course of the season, especially if you don't have guys in that roster that have length. I don't think Tanner Scott is a length guy. I think he's a high-end reliever, one-inning type of reliever, which is the case for just about all these guys that are currently projected for the roster. Talking about guys that are currently projected for the roster: Michael Kopech, Blake Trinan, Evan Phillips, Anthony Banda, Ryan Brazier, Alex Vesia being the core of those. I think most of those guys are one-inning guys for the most part. I worry about signing too many of those type of guys and having a little bit of flexibility, but it certainly looks like the Dodgers are looking for a player like that and trying to find them to fit onto the roster. So with Tanner Scott, I'm honestly still not expecting it, but it would not surprise me 100% if they decided to go ahead and sign Tanner Scott, because the limits that the Dodgers seemingly have, or at least the limits that organizations on a whole have had, seem to have been worn away by the Dodgers over the past year. So it's not something that I was anticipating having the Dodgers go to this extreme. So if they're willing to go this extreme to get a talent like Tanner Scott, who would immediately be one of the best relievers in this bullpen and would make it almost unstoppable, it would be a really good signing for them to be able to do. So I'm still waiting out hope. I don't think it's going to happen because it'd be out of character, but at this point I just throw up my hands and don't know the limitations of what the Dodgers are willing to go out and sign for a player. Let's see. Benji, thank you very much for joining us. Curious to see what you think about a Kim move that the Dodgers were able to sign. We have some fans from South Korea as well. Thank you so much for joining us as well. I'm excited to see what he's able to do going forward to be able to contribute to be on this team. Augustus Phelps, thank you very much for joining us. Will Alex Freeland still see some time at the big leagues this summer? Potentially at some point. I think so. I think it's a combination of two different things. One, how is Alex Freeland actually doing at the AAA level to this point in the season? There was some struggle when he first made his jump into the AAA season. I think overall he had about an 82 WRC plus, just thinking from the top of my head, at Oklahoma City when he made the jump there during the last month and a half, 2 months. Remember, he started the season in Great Lakes. One of the best months in Great Lakes Loons history he had down there after spending the previous season with them. Moved up to AA, where he had a lot of success, 127 WRC plus during his couple months with Tulsa. Made his way up to Oklahoma City. There was a little bit of struggle, but during the last 2 weeks, he cut his strikeout percentage during those 2 weeks to under 18%. Really solid, was still walking 12%. That's the thing with Alex Freeland, is he's going to get a lot of walks, and he's going to wait for his pitch to be able to swing. So he waits for his pitch to be able to swing. And we saw the last 2 weeks, I think it was a 160 WRC plus. Small sample size, but showed to make adjustments once he got a little bit more acclimated in Oklahoma City. If that continues, the Dodgers have a choice, because he's going to have to be added to the Dodgers roster following the 2025 season in order to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. So the Dodgers are going to have the choice as far as when to add him onto the roster. I think first chances are going to go to the guys that are on the roster. We already look right now, and there already is questions and limitations to a guy like an Andy Pages getting opportunities onto the roster. I think that's going to become a question. And then it becomes another question, and this is a selfish question for the organization. And even if a guy like an Alex Freeland is ready, do you want to call him up to the big leagues and have him get some plate appearances and then send him down to the minor league level and potentially waste his minor league option? I don't think that is the case, nor do I think that would be the smartest move for them going forward, unless there is some type of injury, which could take place, in which case he could be the best option. I think selfishly for the organization, unless he breaks out and is able to establish himself and be on the big league roster for the remaining of the 2025 season and take a spot from a player like a Miguel Rojas, who would have to be the spot that he takes a spot from. Unless he's able to do that and establish himself, or they need somebody like that to be able to fill into the shortstop position and he gets called up and fill in that emergency type role. I think ideally, if you're the Dodgers, you would get him to being as close to big league ready as possible, and then be able to call him up at some point towards the end of the minor league season, to the point where you get him at least a little bit of big league experience, get him to know what it is like in LA with the Dodgers without using up one of his minor league options during the course of the season when you don't necessarily have to. I think that's probably the plan given the current state of the roster, although certainly if he works his way onto the roster, I think they're going to give him every opportunity and see what he has at the shortstop position, because I think another aspect of this, and one of the reasons why they might use one of his minor league options during the course of the season and add him on a little bit earlier, is you have to decide what is the future for the shortstop position, and can Alex Freeland actually be a realistic option for the Dodgers at shortstop going forward. I think that could be something that they look into, but I think at some point he's going to get an opportunity, he's going to get a chance, and I'm so excited to see him get that chance, because I think he's got a lot of tools to be a big league caliber shortstop and do all sorts of different things. Whether that consistency is able to find it together, or whether he's able to When he does swing, which doesn't happen all the time, when he's able to swing, he's able to make the right choices and make enough consistent hard contact. I think he will be, but that consistency is going to be key to him being a big league regular going forward. Continuing on with any of this right here with some of the comments. I know I have a couple of super chats to get to. I'm excited to get to those and interact with some of you guys. Hepatitis see you later. The Kim signing probably was to make sure they won't have to rely on a Kevin Biggio or a Nick Ahmed or a Trammell types in the event of injuries. I probably agree with that type of case. I think it's additional insurance and an option that, look, if he's not ready to be in the big leagues, which is not to say that he won't be ready to be in the big leagues at the start of the season, but there usually is an adjustment period. They do have the ability to send him down to the minor leagues, and I think that is such a huge asset and something that the Dodgers on this roster currently do not have a lot of. I think that's one of the best things of bringing over a player like Kim and what he's able to do. Let's see, continuing on with right now, D4s, love the signing, love the athleticism. We know Lux has been and likely will continue to be shopped. Kim is a low-cost, high-upside option, whereas Lux will be $10 million per year very soon. Right now, I think Lux is actually projected to be about 2.7. I think it is the projection with arbitration going forward. And then the second year of arbitration, or the next year, which will be his final year of arbitration, will be a little bit of an increase from that if we're projecting that out. Cost-wise, there's really not much of a difference between Kim and Lux. I think Kim provides you with an additional option. I think there's reason to be excited about his athleticism and what he's able to do for the offense and some of his versatility that you might not see a Gavin Lux. I think certainly they're going to be looking at potential options for Gavin Lux, but I don't think they're going to be forced to be able to do that. The message continues to be, whether you agree with it or not, that the Dodgers are planning to have Mookie Betts as shortstop and Gavin Lux at second base. Could just be the organization talk to create opportunities elsewhere, but as long as the organization's putting that out there and as long as they're stating that, that's what I'm going to say going forward and what I anticipate them doing going forward. Let's see, continue. Sasaki Scott and Lux, Outman, CT3, Grove, out, agree. Certainly need to move spots to be able to make opportunities on this roster. Gavin Lux and CT3, it's going to be interesting to see what they do going forward. As Greg said, CT3 is great person, a great teammate, but we have to be realistic of what we're able to do on the roster. That's something that we're going to have to keep in mind. And certainly the Dodgers know that. And especially with what they're wanting to do, with players they want to keep on their roster, they have to make decisions. And they're going to be hard decisions that they're going to have to make if they want to keep that in mind. Cole, other GMs already on the phone with Freeland and Cartaya. Other teams scoop up Dodgers players. I think that's true, and I think they're absolutely looking for other players to be able to try to figure that out and be able to make a trade for Cartaya. It's be interesting to see where he lands over the course of the next week. Jay, thank you very much for joining us. As a chat just jumped on me for just a second, we'll get back to that. Jeff Spiegel over Dodger Blue does a great job over there. Just said that Kim can't refuse to be optioned to the minor leagues. That's what we've been talking about. That's absolutely a huge addition and huge plus to him being on this team. Augustus, CT3 will be hard to trade, maybe keep until trade deadline, and then DFA if he's not doing well. Could be, but then that's going to take the spot of somebody else as well, and somebody else that you might want to see additional playing time for. We'll get to the super chats right now. Kristen Rivaro, can you please do a comparison between Hye-seong Kim and the most recent Dodgers edition as well? Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. What we'll do is we'll compare the KBO numbers for both of those players, and I'll go ahead and pull up some of these. And we'll start with Hye-seong Kim. I'll start with Hye-seong Kim first, mostly because I'm struggling with it was weird. I did a lot of homework and tried to get the pronunciation for, I believe it's Hye-seong Kim. I don't remember exactly what the exact pronunciation is. I listened to it probably 100 different times, and as soon as I went on air, just lost it immediately. So we're going to start with Hye-seong Kim, the player the Dodgers did not sign at this point, played for the Padres. Looking at his 3 most recent seasons leading up to the KBO when he signed after the 2020 season when he signed with the San Diego Padres. He put up a 106, 142, and 141. This is Hye-seong Kim, San Diego Padre, put up a 106, 142, and 141 WRC pluses in respective seasons. Hye-seong Kim had a higher walk percentage, talking about it went up from 9.4 all the way up to 12.1 in those seasons, while the strikeout percentage was at about 14%, dropped down to about 11%. What you're going to see from Hye-seong Kim, there's a lot more power potential, or at least there was a lot more power potential with him, consistently around a 20, got up to about a 30 home run potential. So Hye-seong Kim, when he came over, was a decent walk, lower strikeout type of guy with some impact power to his bat. And I think he also played a lot more of the shortstop position. Yeah, he was a consistent shortstop with additional versatility, but mostly a shortstop primary position coming over from the KBO. And then Kim, the Dodgers most recently signed, not Hye-seong Kim, Hye-seong Kim. I'm trying to make sure that I differentiate between the two. When comparing them, it's a little bit lower walk percentage for Kim, of the Dodgers. You look at the strikeout percentages, and they're actually very similar to what Hye-seong Kim had. So very similar strikeout percentage. Walk percentage is marginally lower, a little bit lower than what his is. The ISO, the actual power numbers, are significantly lower though. Whereas Hye-seong Kim was putting up 20 and then up to 30 home run potential. The highest home run total that we've seen from Kim that the Dodgers just signed was 11. There's a lot more, I believe, speed to his game, or at least a little bit more speed to what we're seeing, although it's fairly similar. We still saw 30 stolen base potential from Hye-seong Kim for the Dodgers when they signed their signing to Kim. He got up to 46 stolen bases, so a little bit more speed, a little bit more contact-oriented type of player, a little bit less power for the Dodgers when they signed him. There's a lot of ground balls in his profile, which would probably be my biggest concern with the Dodgers' most recent signing. Is there's almost a 20% increase in ground ball percentage that I'm certain that the Dodgers are going to take a look at, and they're going to do everything they can to be able to try to fix with him and try to figure out what he's able to do. So with him, they're both very acclimated, or very well respected with Korea and for what they're able to do. Remember, Kim received, I think he's 4 straight Golden Glove Award winner, which does not mean best defensive player. It means best player at a specific position. He's very well respected and got a lot to him. So 2 very talented players. I would say Hye-seong Kim, player that signed with the San Diego Padres, had a much higher pedigree than the player than what Dodgers most recently signed. Same thing with Jung-hoo Lee, who got a higher contract with the San Francisco Giants. It does not mean that the player that the Dodgers signed isn't talented. It just means that there is a lot more success that Hye-seong Kim had, or at least the San Diego Padres were willing to give him a higher contract than what the Dodgers or other organizations were able to give, because I think there is more power potential with Hye-seong Kim. Still a lot of room to grow. There's still a lot of good things that can happen with Kim with the Dodgers, so I'm excited to see what he's able to do going forward. So Hye-seong Kim, very much a shortstop with Hye-seong Kim, which I know that's not exactly the pronunciation, so I apologize for that. But the player the Dodgers signed, primarily second base, but I think the Dodgers think that they can grow him into being a little bit more versatile. Also, he is a left-handed hitter that the Dodgers signed. That is something that also is a little bit different as well. Let's see, Young Yi, MLB Trade Rumors ranked Kim as number 26 on the top 50 free agents, while Michael Conforto was ranked 32nd. Interesting evaluation that they had. I think Conforto is going to have much more of a immediate impact at the big league level, but there might be some long-term potential that teams are betting on with a player like Kim. Let's see. Kike is one of those players that has been successful in the playoffs. Can they still have room to bring him back? Says Capel. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. I apologize for that. Certainly, there could be a way to get Kike Hernandez back on this roster, but it requires a sacrifice for the Dodgers. Either they have to move off of one of Chris Taylor or a Gavin Lux, which in the case of Chris Taylor, which I think would be the spot that he would take up. And I think that's probably the spot that they'd be looking for. If that is the case, they very likely have to designate for him for assignment, which goes a little bit out of character to how the Dodgers typically handle situations like this. They typically don't like to designate legacy type players for assignment, although it certainly could be an option. And certainly at this point, I think Kike Hernandez is the better fit and player for the Dodgers roster. But they are paying Chris Taylor, $15 million, and will pay him that unless they trade him to another team, which I think is probably unlikely. And in either case, Dodgers are going to eat most of that money. So to bring back Kike Hernandez, either you have to move off of Chris Taylor, which would be the best case scenario for the Dodgers to bring back Kike, or he has to fill in the roster spot that is currently occupied by either Kim or Andy Pages, which means that you don't have any flexibility on your big league club if you have that. That would mean your bench is Barnes, Miguel Rojas, Chris Taylor, and Kike Hernandez. You would not have any room to have Andy Pages or Kim or James Outman or anybody from the minor leagues on your roster. If that is the case, I wouldn't imagine seeing Kike Hernandez back. I think it has to be in place of a player like a Gavin Lux or probably in the place of a Chris Taylor if they want to bring him back. Otherwise, you have no flexibility with this roster, and I don't think that is the best case scenario for this team or a realistic one to get you through the course of the season. Continuing on right here, Young Yi, I know Sasaki is in Japan now, but where are Yotani Yamamoto at? LA or Japan? No idea where they're at. I don't really care what they do in their off season, just as they're ready to perform during the actual regular season. Then we got a super chat. I do not know, and I think that's somebody who is from South Korea. So thank you very much for the super chat. Thank you again, Christopher Navarro. Can't thank you guys enough for the super chats. I can't pronounce the name, so I can't give a shout out to you, but it is from South Korea fans. Let's go Sasaki and Tanner Scott, two incredible talents. I want both. I would love to see both of them in the Dodgers uniform because they are two of the better players or better free agents out there. And Roki Sasaki with what he could be, and especially at the price that he has. And then Tanner Scott's been one of the best left-handed relievers in the game of baseball. Lux, Outman, CT3, Grove, Miller out is what he's looking for. Thank you very much for the super chat. I'm a fan of most of the guys that are listed and out, and I think there's certainly, especially with most of those guys, except for CT3, most of those guys do have flexibility and minor league options to be able to move up and down. You need to have some of those guys on your roster to be able to help occupy this system. But certainly with players like James Outman, only has one minor league option left. Dodgers have to make a decision about him soon if they want to get much value for him, and I think there's some other organizations that actually are interested in a player like a James Outman. I know most Dodgers fans have given up. There's other organizations that might not have given up, and so a trade might be worthwhile for a James Outman, but that can't 100% be given to a guy that doesn't have any flexibility or a guy without minor league options, because then you're going to crowd the 26-man roster even more. And you got to leave at least a little bit of room for flexibility. But trading a James Outman when he only has one minor league option left could be something to look into. Obviously, we talked a lot about Gavin Lux and Chris Taylor and how they fit onto this roster. There is a lot of holdup with both of them and a lot of question marks that they bring, particularly with what Chris Taylor is going to be able to do and the holdups that he can have with bringing in some youth onto this roster, whether that be Kim or whether that be Arraez. And then with Gavin Lux, particularly a lot of that comes from the questions about the defensive ability that a Mookie Betts has. For Grove, I know a lot of Dodgers fans are not the biggest fans of Michael Grove. I'm a fan of what he's able to produce, and I think there's a lot of value with having him still around, and he still has a minor league option available, another one of those arms that you can throw out. And then Bobby Miller still has a world of potential around him, and I believe also still has 2 minor league options, and a lot of teams would give up a ton to be able to get a player like that. So not going to get rid of these guys for nothing unless you want to move off of a Chris Taylor. A lot of these guys do have some value, and so they can look to try to go ahead and make some type of trade if they need to free up some roster spots. Every single one of these guys on the 40-man roster is incredibly talented, and to the point where they designated for assignment earlier today one of their former top prospects and a guy that still has a lot of potential but hasn't found the consistency yet in a Diego Cartaya. They just don't have the flexibility for a player like him at this point, who likely isn't going to see time in Los Angeles no matter basically what he does. And that's not a criticism of Diego Cartaya. That is an understanding of where the Dodgers roster is at this point. Victor Fuentes, thank you very much for joining us. Question, what type of prospect can a Diego Cartaya trade bring? It's probably not a big name prospect at this point, just because there has been some struggle recently with Diego. Also, there is, because he takes up a 40-man roster spot and only has 1 minor league option left and still has a lot to prove. Other organizations know that as well, and they're probably not going to give up the biggest prospect to bring in a Diego Cartaya. They're going to evaluate and see if there's a trade that makes sense for the Dodgers. They're going to probably be looking for they're going to be looking for somebody that's not on the 40-man roster, that has as much time away from being Rule 5 eligible if they can get a high-end prospect like that, or somebody that can be additional depth to their organization. I don't think it's going to be necessarily anything fancy, just because the Dodgers aren't in a place of high leverage. When you're talking about trades, and especially trades that you can win, you want to play in the leverage type game, meaning you don't have to make a move. You can turn to other teams and be able to make better moves, or you can wait and hold on to that type of player. With this trade with Diego Cartaya, because they designated for him for assignments, the ability to be able to wait is not in the Dodgers' corner. They don't have that ability, because if he is not traded in the next 7 days, then he gets placed on waivers, in which case a team can pick up Diego Cartaya and not trade the Dodgers anything. So they're not going to get probably a quality prospect in return for Diego Cartaya, or at least to the quality that Diego Cartaya is worth. They're going to probably get some type of deal done, whether that's a player, whether that's for international signing bonus money. Remember, the number of players that teams can have within their minor league system has been shrinking over the course of the past couple of seasons, so I don't even know if they're going to get a ton of players for that. They have to make an evaluation of that player and the players that they have in their system and how they want to move forward with that. So they have a couple days to be able to trade. It's really difficult to be able to say who they could potentially get. I'm certain they're looking for potentially bigger trades as well, to see what sort of options they can have to free up space, to free up flexibility on this roster. He could be involved in that type of trade. However, I think the most likely scenario is for some sort of smaller trade for potentially some low-level guy, or for some international signing bonus pool money, or something like that would be something I'd be looking for. Continuing on with the comments section, let's continue right here. Kim is very much a contact hitter as opposed to a power type hitter. Let's see. Continuing on just a second, we did a little bit of comparison with these. let's see, just seeing if there's anything else that we have before we go ahead and log off. Let's keep the dynasty going. Let's go ahead. Let's go Dodgers. Absolutely on 100%. Christian Navarro, the stadium's already really close. I've gone to games, both of them. Not sure exactly what he's talking about with there. Let's continue. Just a couple more comment section right here. You kind of feel a little bit bad, says Ederico. Feel bad for Cartaya. Never got the chance to play for the Dodgers at the big league level. Yeah, it's tough for a lot of these guys at the farm system, especially living up to the standard that a lot of fans have placed on them, or the expectations to be the next biggest thing. There's a lot of weight gets put on the shoulder, especially when the shoulder of a 20-year-old kid just being called, or just trying to make his way, be able to survive at the big league level. You have to give these guys patience, and you have to also understand that these guys are kids trying to be able to survive and find his way up. So disappointing that he's not going to get his chance for the Dodgers, or at least in most likelihood. But I'm excited because I think this means he's going to get a shot with another organization. I think another organization to be able to pick him up, and I'm excited to see what he's able to do. That's the thing that I want for each one of these guys in the system, is I want them to get a chance at the big league level. I don't care if that's with the Dodgers. I don't care if that's with another organization. I just want them to get a fair shot in the big leagues, and I don't think Diego Cartaya was going to get a fair shot with the Dodgers, nor do I think that the Dodgers' best roster spot was utilized with having that many catchers in their organization. So I think it's a better opportunity, probably the best thing for both of them going forward, assuming the Dodgers can go ahead and make some type of trade. Continuing on with the same person right here, what we know right now, we have an Alex Freeland for shortstop, third base, and first base. He's hasn't played any first base. He's played second base, but for that infield, he has the ability to play all of those different positions on the infield. He's also 22, 23 years old, something like that. Alex Renteria, will he continue to develop and be big league ready in 2 years? Since I don't see Mookie Betts playing more than 2 years at shortstop, if the Dodgers committed to him at shortstop, I think he probably will be big league ready if he makes the exact same strides at some point during the middle to end of the 2025 season. I think that's the soonest is when he's going to be ready. Now, that doesn't mean when he jumps up to the big league level that he's going to immediately be 100% there, or be exactly ready to go, or have all the different tools ready to go. I think there's going to be an adjustment period with a player like an Alex Freeland, just like there is with most players coming up to the big leagues. But I think the potential absolutely is there, and he's going to start to need to face big league caliber hitting towards the end of the 2025 season, assuming that he's able to make the adjustment properly in Oklahoma City. So I think the Mookie Betts at shortstop, if you need an additional player to be able to call up, he's that type of player. There's other players within this organization down at the lower level. There's also a Noah Miller who is as rock solid defensively at shortstop as he potentially could be. There's other players like, I know we've talked a little bit about Matt McLain potentially being an option if you wanted to look externally for a trade, especially if you're giving up a piece like an Andy Pages. But his brother, Sean McLain, is within the organization, and I think has the ability to make some really good improvements offensively this upcoming season. Really good kid too. Excited to see what he's able to do. With Outman, I'm willing to give him another year before letting him go. The question is, you won't really have any other choice if he's within this organization, because if he gets sent down to the minor league level, he is going to use his last minor league option, in which case you have to decide whether or not you want to keep him at the big league level. Now we'll give this to James Outman. James Outman struggled at the big league level last year. When he got sent down to Oklahoma City, 130 WRC plus. He was really good when he was down at the minor league level. Now, there's still a lot of things, a lot of holes in his game, and he's certainly not the perfect player, but the potential is still there. And a lot of other teams see that, which means if you want to trade a player like that, you don't wait until you have no leverage, which means no minor league options, and you'd have to start him at the big league level, and other organizations know that. They like the minor league options. A team like Tampa Bay likes having players with minor league options that they can move up and down depending on who's actually playing well. And so if you want to get something out of him, you would have to look to trade him now. But you also need some depth, because if you trade all of your depth like that at the minor league level, you either have to call other guys up, they certainly could, or you might have to at some point rely on a player like a Kevin Biggio, like a Nick Ahmed from other places, and be able to bring them in and then designate them for assignment. So continuing on right now with just a couple more comments on here, talking about Bobby Miller having some great stuff that he certainly does. Be interesting to see if he's able to put all the pieces back together from what he had. Hepatitis C later. Cartaya exhibit is one where you trade prospects whenever you have the chance. Could be an option, and that could be a decision that you make. And certainly you have to be more willing to be able to give up those type of players in these situations, because a lot of other organizations value that. You also need to get younger at some point with this team. So it is a tricky determination to be able to decide which are the correct players to be able to give up in trade type situations, and which are the correct players to be able to keep on. Because there's other players that the Dodgers prospects have given up in trades that have turned on to be really good players. I'm sure the Dodgers would love to have Yordan Alvarez and O'Neal Cruz still part of this organization. They traded them out when they were still very young away. There's other players that they've traded out, haven't worked out. Others that have. Very, very unusual and unlinear process that Major League Development has, and it's very unpredictable who's going to be able to stick. But the Dodgers have had a history of being able to develop guys decently well at the big league level in comparison to a lot of other guys. And if you want some proof with that, I actually have links to that in the description of this video. Hitters to debut, as well as the Dodgers and their draft results. See how they compare over the past 10 seasons. Hitters to debut looks at players that grew up within an organization. So a player like Yordan Alvarez and O'Neal Cruz, they didn't technically grow up in the Dodgers organization. They spent most of the time in Houston and Pittsburgh, respectively. So they get Pittsburgh and Houston gets the credit for them, but other players have spent time in the Dodgers organization. How do those hitters compare and the results compare to other organizations? Check that out in the link in the description of this video if you want to take a look of that. Kristen Navarro was talking about how close the spring training facilities in Arizona are. Great job, Austin. Dodgers Dawgs schedule. Yes, so just a little bit, let you guys know of the schedule. I don't know of any player interviews or coach interviews that are coming up. Casey knows all of that schedule, and it could be something where a little bit of a break, because we respect the players in this organization, want to make sure that they're spending time with their families during the holidays. I'm sure there will be more interviews that are coming up shortly, so in the meantime, if you have not had the chance to watch all of the interviews that we have, or if you missed some of the interviews, they are available on Dodgers Daily. Be able to go check out and hear from some of the players in this minor league system, some of the coaches. I know some of you have enjoyed the segments that Casey puts on, the Down on the Farm segments, which you actually get to hear clips from some of these coaches and players. They're absolutely phenomenal. I can't give Casey enough credit. I can't give enough credit to the players and the coaches and all personnel within this organization, and just their baseball mind and IQ and what they're able to bring. It's absolute privilege to be able to provide those type of interviews for those guys. So go ahead and check that out. Be able to check out and look at some of the videos in the meanwhile. As far as the rest of the week, it depends on when Casey is feeling a little bit better and ready to go on. Typically, he has a Sunday night show that he has. I would keep an eye out and look out for that. I would actually, if you have not subscribed, please do so and turn on the notifications just so you know if Casey is able to go live on Sunday, depending on how he's feeling. If he's not feeling well at this point, or at that point, I will be on Monday night at some point, Monday afternoon to Monday night. I think going forward for the Monday shows, I'm going to have to move it a little bit earlier on my schedule, at basically bouncing right after the workday. I don't think I have to do that quite yet. It might be a little bit later this time around, but I might have to start making that transition to be a little bit earlier on Monday's shows. But there will be a show on Monday next week and a show on Wednesday next week to make sure that we're giving you guys as many shows as we possibly can. So that's what we're going to be looking at as far as schedules going up. It's good. There's going to be shows. It'll depend on Casey's health and when he's ready to go. So continue to be praying for him. He should be back pretty soon and should be ready to go at some point. So we'll be talking a little bit more Dodgers baseball with him and get some of his thoughts of the Dodgers' most recent addition and signing. They are still in a really good position. The Dodgers as an organization are still healthy. And I think with the signing of Kim, he has a lot of versatility and he has a lot of flexibility on this roster. This could potentially limit some playing time for other players, and yet there's still a lot of world of potential for him. They've decided to trade and utilize his roster spot for a Diego Cartaya's roster spot. I wish Diego Cartaya nothing but the best, and I hope that he receives an opportunity going forward in the future. Kim, I'm excited to see the potential that he has. Certainly, a lot of people in Korea are so beyond thrilled with him coming over to the Dodgers. The Dodgers are they are the destination spot in Major League Baseball at this point. A lot of players are wanting to come over and sign for this team and be able to find any opportunity to be able to play for this organization. The Dodgers are operating on they're doing everything that they possibly can to win a World Series. Even the smallest type of move and smallest type of player is not getting overlooked. The Dodgers organization is doing everything that they can to win. I'm excited to see what Kim is able to provide for this team. It's going to be a little bit of something different. He deserves patience and he deserves opportunity to be able to grow. So with him, especially with his ability to be able to be optioned down to the minor league level, I think is going to create a lot of versatility and a lot of options for the Dodgers. Now, for that, I'm excited about. And I'm excited about the 2025 season. This being the first show in 2025. Happy New Year to everybody. I'm so excited for what this year is going to bring for the Dodgers level, for the organization, and for their push to win a World Series. I'm ready for the Loons to go ahead and make a push for a Midwest League Championship as well. As Showtime LA had mentioned, he's going to be in Great Lakes for the opener. I will see you at the opener there when that happens. I will see you guys at the beginning of spring training if you get a chance. Until then, we will continue to cover this Dodgers team, continue to cover the Dodgers offseason. I will try to remember and try to learn how to say Kim's first name right next time and be able to get that pronunciation right. Until next time, though, thank you all for tuning in. Go Dodgers. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. Excited to see what this new year is going to bring.